Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers, I'm your host Sultan M. Hali. In today's episode of Defense and Diplomacy, we plan to discuss the prospects of peace in Afghanistan and the region after the assassination of Professor Burhanuddin Rabbani. The professor was not only an academic, but he was also a mujahid. He was also the president of Afghanistan before the Taliban overran the country. Lately, he was the chairman of the Higher Peace Council. What effect his assassination will have on the peace process? To discuss that, we are honored to have in our studio today Ilyas Mohsin Saab, former Secretary Interior, who also has a keen eye on the events of Afghanistan. In fact, he is compiling a book on his experiences and what he has observed in Afghanistan. Welcome, sir. We have with us Professor Salma Malik, who is an academic and an analyst from Quaid-e-Azam University. Welcome, Salma. We have with us Brigadier Javed Iqbal, who is also an academic and an analyst. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, how do you see the assassination of Professor Rabbani? In fact, I believe you had the occasion to rub shoulders with him and meet him on a few occasions.
Yes, I recall having met him when I was posted in Bonn as a counselor way back in mid-80s. And he was, as you rightly said, a scholar as well as a leader and a fighter. But the fact remains that we are in a catch-22 situation. It will only get aggravated by this murder. The attempts, to my mind, the attempts for forging some sort of a peace that Karzai has been making, of course, with the blessings from American president, will get a terrible setback. And you can see the reaction of the Northern Alliance leaders. But unfortunately, if you look at history, then the fact remains that it will remain like that till such time that a situation develops where peace can prevail among themselves, among the Afghans, and of course there will be a safe haven, maybe for US, negotiated one, not by force.
I'll come back to this, Salma Malik. How do you look at this ghastly incident? Because a couple of weeks back, the half-brother of President Karzai, Ahmad Karzai, was also assassinated.
Exactly.
And he held a very important position, and he was probably trying to bring about some kind of negotiations. Now, this is obviously a very major setback.
Very major. Actually, it's the third such incident taking place in close quarters, and definitely there's a pattern to it. As you have just laid it out, that previously Mr. Karzai's brother, then the governor of one of the important provinces, then unfortunately President Rabbani, all of them.
And just prior to this, the attack in Kabul on 13th
and the attack on Kabul
September.
and held up in that situation. So all of this is actually indicative of a very dangerous tendency, and that is as to where this thing is entirely leading. Because if we look at President Rabbani and the High Peace Council's performance record, even those within the Northern Alliance, or what used to be the Northern Alliance, the leadership were not very happy with the way the negotiations were taking place, or with the very fact that they didn't really want to enter into any negotiation, considering that it wasn't exactly a very neutral forum, plus the fact that it is not a very effective forum. Some consider its neutrality as to be under question. Some of them considered that the Taliban were not worthy people to be entering negotiations with. So one thing is pretty evident that and whatever the Peace Council was actually coming out with, or the face of it, was President Rabbani himself. And Karzai was banking very, very heavily on the good offices of President Rabbani. So actually it was all a very actor-based issue. And his
let me solicit the opinion of
Yes.
Brigadier Javed Iqbal. Salma Malik says that he was not all that effective. I'm talking about Mr. Burhanuddin Rabbani, because of his Tajik background, and obviously the Taliban were a little apprehensive. the Tajiks and the Pashtuns traditionally have been on cross swords with each other. How effective do you think was the High Peace Council?
I, for one, quite agree with her once she says that this was a question of legitimacy and acceptability. One should not forget that he had the Tajik background and he had been the president, but at the same time, as far as Tajik alone are concerned, they don't constitute a majority. Pashtuns, they constitute a majority, and as far as Tajik are concerned, they are number 2 in the I would say, as far as the demography is concerned. So that was one. Number 2, also coupled with its linkages with the Haqqani, for the reason that he also has got a background, a common background with the Badakhshan and that area. So because of this background and because of this Pashtun presence over there in 52% of the majority, there was certainly a question of acceptability as far as his heading this council is concerned. And further, not much of headway honestly could have been made for the past 1 year. It was a 68-member kind of a committee, so not much could be made on that account also.
But let me point out that you see quite a few of these parleys were kept secret. But we noticed that there was a meeting in Qatar, there was one in Germany, and there was also, which of course didn't make much headway, but there was also talk of allowing the Taliban to open up their own office in Qatar, which everybody seemed to know about except the Taliban themselves. So what's your opinion?
There is a growing realization that we can't keep Taliban out of it for a very longer time. That goes without saying that they are a reality to reckon with. Whether United States realizes that, whether the other stakeholders they realize that, etc. But the fact is that in the background there have always been efforts. Such like efforts they continue to go around as a normal peace kind of process. But if you want to translate it in the tangible terms, and if you want to just count out 1, 2, 3, in the classical sense there wasn't an outcome. And further, we should not forget that Taliban, they came after him. You see, he after his rule. So it was he was then overtaken by the.
So if you just hold that thought, sir, let me get back a little into history. And so we take advantage of your presence in the studio here, have been a witness to history. In 1974, if media reports are to be believed, President Bhutto wanted Sardar Daud to recognize the Durand Line. And to do that, I'm told that he had invited Professor Burhanuddin Rabbani, his student Ahmad Shah Masood, and Jan Muhammad. And they were supposed to go and create a kind of an atmosphere according to which Sardar Daud was to be forced. The effort continued, but President Bhutto was no more. What's your opinion on this, sir?
Well, yes, I'm reminded of, I mean, this is the believed version. But the fact remains that it was not that simple, because you see the Russians were then coming into Afghanistan gradually. And I'm not an Afghan, I'm a Pakistani. So they would have found, Zahir Shah and Dawood together would have found it very difficult to make a commitment on an issue which is their only, which gives them a locus standi, as it were. I mean, now it's more than 100 years and it's a settled issue. But the fact remains that there are crankish factors once in a while invoke on both sides of the border, you see. But coming back to this, you see, the thing is, as has been told by both my colleagues, US must realize that history proves, if history and tradition is anything, it proves that you cannot conquer Afghanistan. You will have to either run away like they did in Vietnam, which now they can't afford because of the mineral wealth and you know, energy and I mean, all
even the energy corridor.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying, you see. So their stakes are far higher than ever that the Americans fought for. And secondly, they must realize that I draw your attention to General Eikenberry, you know, 2006. He was a brilliant man, later he became an ambassador. And he told, there is a research recently published by the International Strategic Institute, in which he said in 2006, 2007, something to this effect, I'm not quoting, is going to be a make or a break year. if we can inspire confidence in the people and sort of winning their hearts and minds, we would have made a headway. Otherwise, that will be the beginning of the end. Now you can see the end is coming.
Absolutely.
Which way it comes, God knows.
But we only pray and hope it's for the better.
Yes.
Salma Malik, the former Interior Secretary just mentioned about the US role in this, and obviously the US role is very big.
It is.
However, I would like to ask you, who in your opinion could have assassinated the professor, because if it has had such a major setback. Now let's talk about hypothetically, there are various groups.
Hypothetically, I'm not playing the devil's advocate, but number one, the Taliban haven't really gone ahead and claimed success. You see, even if he was a Tajik, he was an Ustad and a very well-known figure, a religious scholar in his own right.
And a respected figure.
And a very, very respected figure. People amongst the Northern Alliance or those who were siding with him didn't agree to a lot of things that Karzai and Rabbani were doing together with the High Peace Council. But that doesn't really mean that you end up assassinating him. Number one, the Taliban at this point, till such point, have not really agreed or they have not really confirmed that they have done it. One. Secondly, the thing is that it will not really win them any favor. It's actually going to put everything against them. It will also build the case for the Americans to actually, if they want to, prolong their stay there. It will also allow the forces which are working against the Taliban to actually step up their military efforts in killing more Taliban. And already the point that Americans are saying is, and the ambassador of the US to Afghanistan has also said it, that we need to step up more Taliban killing and Al-Qaeda killing, so to teach them a lesson and to really bring them to a point where they negotiate with us from a point of weakness rather than from a point of strength. So Rabbani's killing doesn't really make sense, but yes, there are madcap elements present everywhere, and I'm not saying the Talibans are really working 100% on rational calculations, so it can be anyone's guess as to who has done the killing. It is yet to be seen, but the very fact is that we cannot really couple it up. Plus the third factor is that, oh, it could be the Pakistanis. It's the Pakistanis who have done this. So that is one of the first thing that propped up immediately from the funeral
Unfortunately,
house.
we are a favorite scapegoat. Let me come to the brigadier on this. There are groups, I mean, of course, as Salma Malik pointed out, and the media says so too, that the Taliban so far have not taken responsibility for this particular assassination. But the usual, you see, harbingers of doom, gloom and conspiracy are pointing towards ISI, towards Pakistan and so on, which I personally believe is bunkum. But what do you think, what is the pressure that's going to come on Pakistan after this particular killing?
First, let me take on where Salma had also mentioned and focusing more on Taliban. In case we look at the key players, there is army or say the ISI, which is generally blamed for that, coupled with the Haqqani group. That's one that which is generally coupled. Then there are Talibans to be reckoned with, and then there are NATO forces, then there are Pashtun and all kind of ethnicity which is over there. So really to answer this question, that it's a pointed question that who did it, for the reason that it's only just about 48 hours earlier happening. And so far, as she says, that Taliban, they haven't even confessed this. Normally we have seen that in their earlier phenomena, they're very quick to comment. And even their spokesperson was asked, and even Macmillan is also on record having said it, that he even did not do any finger pointing. Now coming more towards this, what kind of pressures would it generate as far as Pakistan is concerned?
Before you answer that, so let me give a corollary to what I had said earlier. You see, the pressure is being built upon Pakistan. Lately we saw that they are saying that you get Haqqani or we'll get Haqqani. Now aren't we blowing Haqqani out of proportion? Is Haqqani really all that genius that sitting in North Waziristan, he can travel from here to Kabul all the way and carry out these assassinations, these attacks and so on, and with the ISAF, with the NATO, with the Afghan National Army being there, none of them are effective enough to stop him?
I beg to slightly differ with what your preamble is. It is based on the presumption that probably he is the one, or Haqqani group is the one which is sort of involved, and he enjoys that kind of liberty affection to probably go out and execute any kind of those things. My opinion is that Pakistan has to be kept under pressure by any means, whether sometime associating it with the Haqqani group, sometime ISI doing it, and it's a sort of a blame game. Now if you try and see it with the couple of other happenings which are also around the globe, you see lately the foreign minister, she had met Clinton, and there was a lot of ice which had melted down. The chief of army staff, once he was on a visit to the NATO commander's visit, he went over there and he also met Mike Mullen, and there was a degree of understanding over there. To me, I think there are always groups.
And if the media is to be believed, the Director General of the ISI also met his counterpart, Mr. Petraeus in CIA.
Right.
Yes.
So that if the media is to be believed, I agree with you. But if that be the scenario, so the entire focus is to keep Pakistan under pressure, whether it's related to this or whether it is related to any other kind of thing. I think one of the easiest ways that you could generate pressure and keep Pakistan is that whatever the happening, especially anything of those kind, I don't agree with this for the reason that Pakistan really doesn't get anything over this. By and large, there's an understanding that he was more pro-Pakistan and he had generally inclination for Pakistan.
Exactly my point, sir, that Pakistan has nothing to gain by it. If anything, it has to lose. So this blame game which is coming is, there I agree with you, is to keep up the pressure on Pakistan. Mr. Ilyas Mohsin, you had just mentioned about 2007 and other. I was reading an article only yesterday by Gareth Porter, who talks about the night killings and the night operations, which was actually started by McChrystal, continued by Petraeus, and now it seems to be gaining momentum. What Salma Malik had also pointed out, I endorse that the aim is to bring the Taliban under so much pressure that they come to the negotiating table happily, but under a disadvantage. Now these night operations are very dangerous. You will agree with me, sir, as former Secretary Interior. They tell me, I mean, according to this article by Gareth Porter, the number of night raids have increased from 19 to something like 40 raids per night, where they're not picking up insurgents but innocent civilians whom they think will pinpoint towards the location of the insurgents.
That's the tragedy. They are trying to pressurize the Taliban, supposedly, but in the process they are killing innocent people. Now if you know the traditions of these areas, killing is a very serious subject. It cannot be forgiven just like that out of fear. You would know that, for example, Zahir Shah's father, how was he killed? Nader Shah, King Nader Shah. He was killed by the slave, son of a slave of his, there was a Khan whom Nader Shah got killed. There was a boy who was brought up almost like a slave, but he loved the Khan so much that he took it to himself that he will kill Nader Shah. And he got enrolled in the army. There was a tradition that the king would himself go to the passing out of those cadets. And when he neared this fellow, he whipped out a pistol which was supposed to be without cartridges, but he had maneuvered to carry 3 cartridges. And there King Nader Shah was no more, and a teenager, Zahir Shah, took over. So at least to my mind, I don't know, maybe I have a bias because I know this history this way, but to my mind these things don't easily die, and the number of people being killed in Afghanistan, like you said and Gareth Porter said, in our part of the world, this, they say that these blood feuds continue at least for 2 centuries. Well, God knows how long this will carry on, because unless they and the demand is publicly apologize in a jirga before the aggrieved party, and then the jirga fixes the costs and Khoon Baha, whatever. Yes. So I hold no brief for Taliban, but I am telling you the history. it is very difficult to capture Afghanistan. They are already 10 years gone, and look what America has gone down to. I mean, they have lost trillions of dollars, not only for Afghanistan, of course, their misadventure in Iraq also accounted for that, and then how they are plummeting. But the fact remains that if history is any guide, well, I don't know, if history is any guide, they will have to come to terms somehow with these Taliban, either conquer them, let us see if they can conquer, like you said, that if they were so good, why couldn't they kill Haqqani all these years? See?
Right. So, Salma, Ilyas Mohsin Sahib has painted actually a bleak picture. Unfortunately, it's more towards the truth. But how can, you see, peace be achieved if so much bloodshed, so much killing is going on? How can you get the Taliban to the negotiating table?
Number one, if you may allow, you previously mentioned about the Qatar and the other German incidents where these people have been brought into picture. They were not really as part of the High Peace Council thing. They were sideline negotiations, and those who have really been brought into the fold, so to speak, are not even very worthy mentioning Taliban. And we also know the fact that there have been fake interlocutors who have been negotiating and getting money.
In fact, it's quite a scandal.
So that was quite a scandal. So these things will go on. At the moment, if you look at the timeline that we have, we are already entering 2012, just 3 months short of that, and 2014 is the pullout date. Now what do the Americans do? They need to put something on the result card. So the biggest scapegoat, as we have already talked about, is that if anything goes wrong, they can't blame it on the Afghans, because the Afghans really don't have, unfortunately, the proverbial spine for the moment to cushion anything. Karzai is the puppet. Unfortunately, the Guardian went ahead and even ended up saying that Rabbani was the puppet of the puppet.
Exactly.
Exactly. Though
I mean, we may not agree with it, but that's
the slain personality and to the president that he was, I would not like to call him a puppet, but unfortunately the glaring reality is very much that. What do? Negotiate more. Try to negotiate them with a lot of genuine sentiment, and try to show them that you really mean business.
Right. We're coming to the end of the program. Let me just take a closing comment from you, sir. What do you think is the prospect for peace? Very, very briefly, sir.
I believe there is a paradigm shift which is required, and it has to be represented by the groups, ethnic groups, and only indigenous solution that would work. Anything which is vertical in structure or brought from outside, that may not pay the dividends.
Right. So viewers, with that we come to the end of this very intense discussion. In fact, all three of the panelists agree that we have lost a friend in Professor Burhanuddin Rabbani. The peace process is likely to take a major hit, but we should not lose hope, although unfortunately, Pakistan is not a major player in this because the Americans are dictating their own will. However, we will have to withstand that, and we will have to try and ensure that some kind of sanity prevails, because peace in this region is imperative. Thank you so much, Ilyas Mohsin Sahab. Thank you so much, Salma Malik. Thank you so much, Brigadier Javed Iqbal. Viewers, keep sending us your comments. Hope to see you next week, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.